2 weeks ago, Iraq sent a letter to the UN promising to, quote, allow the return of United Nations weapons inspectors to Iraq without conditions, unquote. The letter declared that Iraq, quote, based its decision concerning the return of inspectors on its desire to complete the implementation of the relevant Security Council resolutions and to remove any doubts that Iraq still possesses weapons of mass destruction, unquote. Hopeful people around the world found solace in those words. Unfortunately, Iraq's behavior over the past decade requires that thoughtful people measure Iraq by its actions as opposed to its words. Within hours of the arrival of that letter, Iraq was again firing at U.S. and coalition aircraft patrolling the northern and southern no-fly zones.
Well, do we run the risk of being misled by people who would probably love to see us attack Iraq, divert our resources, inflame Muslim world, maybe drag Israel into this?
Could you say that again?
Wouldn't Al-Qaeda love to see? Well,
that's a pip. I'm trying to track it.
I saw a newspaper
Wouldn't Al-Qaeda like to see us drawn into a war with Iraq to their advantage? Is that roughly it?
Yeah, I saw a newspaper cartoon this morning that had the president saying, won't any world leader please support me in attacking Iraq? And then Osama bin Laden raised his hand.
Yeah. Well, I don't know how to respond to that. It seems to me that there are all kinds of theories that people can fashion like that. But what we have to do is keep driving back down to the facts. What are the facts? And we've attempted to communicate them, and we've been careful about what we've said, and what we've said has been exactly accurate.
It's important for all of us in elective office to be clear-eyed about the threats we face, to see the world exactly the way it is, not the way we wish it would be. In order to protect America from current threats and future threats, we got to be cold-eyed realists. And that's why I brought up the issue of Saddam Hussein. See, I view him as a serious threat to America. It's a man who has got connections with Al-Qaeda. Imagine a terrorist network with Iraq as an arsenal and as a training ground, so that a Saddam Hussein could use this shadowy group of people to attack his enemy and leave no fingerprint behind. It's a different kind of war. In the old days, you could count the number of tanks destroyed or ships that were sunk or airplanes shot out of the air, and you say you're making progress. This is a war where the leaders hide in a cave, or they kind of hide in a dark corner of one of these cities around the world, and then they send youngsters to their suicidal deaths. They're fanatics. They're motivated out of hate. The only way to treat them is like they are, cold-blooded killers, and run them down. But we're not only a great nation militarily, we're a great nation, period. I want you to remind your youngsters that in the first theater of the first war of the 21st century, we went into an impoverished country, Afghanistan, not to conquer anybody, but to liberate people. We believe every life counts. Everybody's precious. We understand freedom is not American given, it is God given. And we believe in freedom for all people.
There's been a lot of musing about this having something to do with oil. It doesn't. I know people have trouble believing that, but I am convinced that oil is a commodity. I'm convinced that it's fungible, and what happens, and if people have it, they're going to want to sell it. And the problem with Iraq is not oil. The problem with Iraq is chemical and biological weapons today and the danger of nuclear weapons tomorrow. And that is the problem. Now, would the assets of that country be important for the recovery of that country? You bet.
If the U.S. does not get a second resolution, does the President believe that U.S. taxpayers will disproportionately bear the burden of the reconstruction costs in Iraq?
Well, the reconstruction costs remain a very issue for the future, and Iraq, unlike Afghanistan, is a rather wealthy country. Iraq has tremendous resources that belong to the Iraqi people. And so there are a variety of means that Iraq has to be able to shoulder much of the burden for their own reconstruction.
Do you feel that just having this large force that you outlined in general terms is a momentum for war in and of itself? Just because they're there, they must be used?
No, I don't. What I think of them as, Saddam Hussein was ignoring the United Nations for the past period of years. Saddam Hussein is not ignoring the United Nations today. He's not cooperating, but he's not ignoring them. Inspectors are back in there. They're not being cooperated with, so they're not finding much. But the only reason Saddam Hussein has changed at all is because of the flow of forces and the threat of force.
Chief UN Inspector Blix and International Atomic Energy head El Baradei both told the Council on December 19th that there was not much new in that Iraqi declaration, and we shouldn't have been surprised. Indeed, the 12,000-page document that they tried to pass off as the whole truth was nothing but a rehash of old and discredited material with some new lies thrown in for good measure to make it look fresh lies on top of the old lies. It repeated the biggest lie of all, the claim that Iraq has no weapons of mass destruction, thereby setting the stage for further deception of the inspectors as they went about their business.